And the last method for solving quadratic equations is to use the quadratic formula. Okay, and the key thing to know for this one is that if you're going to use the quadratic formula, you have to get a 0 on one side of the equation first. And then the a is the leading coefficient with that's next to the x squared. The b is the coefficient next to the x, and the c is the constant. But again, only after you have 0 on one side of the equation first. If you don't have 0 on one side of the equation, then the quadratic formula is not going to work. Okay. And so once you get 0 on one side of the equation, all you have to do is plug it into the quadratic formula here. And the hardest part of this is really just remembering the quadratic formula. So what I usually do is I have a song that I have memorized to go with the quadratic formula. And if that helps you remember it, great. And if it doesn't, you don't have to use it. Okay, and it goes to Pop Goes the Weasel, that theme. So the way I would remember this is I would sing in my head, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, and so I would sing that as I'm as I'm plugging it into the formula in order to make sure that I'm doing it correctly. And so let's look at this example here. So if you have 8x squared plus 1 equals 6x squared plus 4x, let's get 0 on one side of the equation first, and then we can put it into the quadratic formula. So in order to get 0 on one side of the equation, let's subtract 6x on both sides of the equal sign and subtract 4x on both sides of the equal sign. Okay, so that these will cancel out on the right side, and so we have 0 on the right side of the equation, and then on the left side, let's see what we have. So 8x squared minus 6x squared gives us 2x squared. We still have a negative 4x, which doesn't combine with anything, and we still have a 1, and that equals 0. Okay, so now that we have 0 on one side of the equal sign, we can see here that a, the leading coefficient, the one that's next to the x squared, is 2. The b, which is the coefficient next to the x, is negative 4. And the c, which is the constant, the number by itself, is 1. So now that you have your a, your b, and your c, you can plug it into the quadratic formula to solve for x. Okay? So we have x equals negative b. So negative of negative 4 basically just means the opposite sign. So that means it's a positive 4 plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac. So b squared, so negative 4 squared would be 16 minus 4 times a is 2 times c is 1 all over 2a. So 2 times 2. Okay. So then we have 4 plus or minus square root. So 16 minus 4 times 2 is 8, times 1 gives us still 8. So we have 16 minus 8, all over 2 times 2 gives us 4. And then keep simplifying. So 4 plus or minus the square root. 16 minus 8 is 8, all over 4. And then because we have a radical here, if we can simplify, we always want to simplify. So let's put over here, square root of 8. When you factor this into its primes, you have 4 times 2 and 2 times 2. So again, pairs go on the outside and whatever's left over stays on the inside. So this simplifies to 4 plus or minus 2 square root of 2 all over 4. And then you can simplify this fraction by dividing the entire numerator and the entire denominator by 2. So we're going to divide the numerator by 2 and divide the denominator by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is just 2 plus or minus 2 rad 2 divided by 2. It's only the regular number that gets divided, not what's inside the radical. So it just stays as radical 2 because 2 divided by 2 is 1. So then we don't have a coefficient in front anymore. We just have a radical 2. And then 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay. And from here, there are a couple options. You can leave this as your answer. That's absolutely acceptable. You can also split it up into two things. So you could do 2 plus square root of 2 over 2 and 2 minus square root of 2 over 2. That's also acceptable. You can also split up the fraction. So for example, 2 over 2 gives us 1 plus square root of 2 over 2. And you can do this either, again, separately, and then 1 minus square root of 2 over 2, or you can do 1 plus or minus square root of 2 over 2. Any of those options are fine.